My name is Stephanie San Pedro, and I am the student loan advocate for the state of Washington. And I'm joined today also by my colleague, Jessica. Jessica, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes. Hi, everybody. My name is Jessica Manfredi. I am the PSLF program associate here at WASAC, and I will be mainly answering questions in the chat while not in the chat, I'm sorry, on the Q&A while Stephanie presents the information. So thank you and welcome.
Yes, so as Jessica just pointed out, there is a chat function and also a Q&A function. If you could please use the Q&A function, it is a lot easier for us to answer your questions in that way. So we can just make sure we get most of them, as many of them answered as possible, as easily as possible that way. So please use that. We also have slide, yes.
Sorry, I just wanted to say that there's someone else still saying that there's no sound. So I just want to make sure, can anybody hear us? If you can't, let us know in the chat. Yeah, it seems like most people can hear. So Kevin, just to let you know, maybe you have to unmute or you have to connect the audio on your on Zoom to your computer. If you don't give permission for the Zoom to make that connection, the audio won't work. So sorry, it just said there was someone else saying that they had an issue earlier. So I want to make sure that people could hear us.
Yeah, that's a very important thing to make sure of. So thank you. Okay. What I was saying. So these we are recording this presentation. However, we also have another one up on our website already, as well as, I believe, slides that we're going to go over today. We are working on an FAQ based on some of the questions that we've gotten from previous workshops. So those will be up as soon as we can answer the questions. So with that, I'm going to get into the presentation, and hopefully we will have lots of time for questions. Okay, first to just introduce WASAC. So the Washington Student Achievement Council is a state agency that helps advance educational opportunities and attainment in Washington. And we do that through various different programs. So public policy, financial aid programs like the Washington College Grant, access and support programs, and then also consumer protection, which is where Jessica and I are housed. Consumer protection, in addition to receiving complaints about student loans, we also receive complaints from students about their schools, as well as authorize types of institutions to operate in the state of Washington, recruit students, and then also advertise to students in Washington. So some of the topics I'm going to go over today is how to find your loan information, identifying all the differences between the repayment plans. I'm going to talk first about the normal PSLF program, and then I'm going to talk about the waiver opportunity. I'm going to go over other sort of important information for you to know. I'm going to talk about COVID a little bit right now, how to make a complaint, and hopefully we will have at least a half hour for questions. Okay, so I like to start with the slide to give you an idea of what student debt looks like in our state. So we have over 780,000 borrowers. That number goes up to over 800,000 if you account for private student loan borrowers as well. And altogether, there's about $28.2 billion in outstanding student debt held by borrowers in our state. And so I like to show this slide because I think it's important to try to normalize having student loan debt, because I think a lot of folks have anxiety, shame, guilt, etc., negative emotions around their debt, but it's really not something to be ashamed of. It's something that lots of people have, even if we're not all talking about it. So next I wanted to talk about a state law that we have here called the Student Loan Bill of Rights. This was established in 2018. It created my position within WASAC, but it also did lots of other things. So Really importantly, it now requires student loan servicers to be licensed with our state's Department of Financial Institutions in the same way that a mortgage lender or servicer has to be licensed to operate in the state. So now student loan servicers have to be licensed. It also requires schools and servicers to notify student borrowers about the existence of the student loan advocate as a resource to them. Borrowers have to request can request information from their servicers, and now there are stipulations on how long they have to wait to receive the information back and what type of information has to be reported to them. It also allows them to make complaints to our office so that we can try to resolve them. And then it enables the advocate to make recommendations to the state legislature regarding student debt in Washington. We also coordinate with the other state student loan advocates in other states to try to advocate for policy change at the federal level as well. Okay, so I wanted to start with COVID because a lot of things have changed since COVID took effect. So the CARES Act passed in 2020, as you probably all know, and for all federally owned loans, it took away interest, so 0 interest right now. It paused payments on federally held loans, and then all of those non-payments, so the period of time during the pause, all of those months count towards public service loan forgiveness, as well as IDR forgiveness. So even though you're not actively making the payment, the CARES Act said, we're going to consider it as if you did. And then it also stopped collections for defaulted loans. So if folks were having their wages garnished, they stopped that collection. This was only for federally owned loans, which means all direct loans, as well as some federally owned FEL loans, which I'm going to talk about the difference. And then I think it's important to say that if you made a payment, a voluntary payment on your loans after March 13th, you can request to have that payment refunded to you, as well as, or this includes if that payment was seized from you due to a collection, you can have those funds returned to you as well. And to clarify, that is for federally owned loans, so direct loans, and federally owned FEL loans. Okay, there is a lot going on with federal student aid right now. These are some of the things. So the major servicer transfers that have occurred this year are that Fed Loan Servicing transferred its loan portfolio to Mohila and Navient to Aidvantage. This was huge because Fed Loan and Navient were the 2 largest student loan servicing companies, but they discontinued their contract with the Department of Education. So they no longer will be servicing federal loans after this year. The return to repayment was announced in August. It will return to repayment in January of next year. So this means payments will be due and interest will begin to accrue again on all federally owned loans. The waiver, which we're here to talk about today, will end at the end of this month, October 31st. And then another important thing that is now the department is saying will happen in summer 2023 is something called an income-driven repayment one-time adjustment period. And so this is to try to correct for borrowers who may have been steered into long-term forbearances. So they will convert forbearance periods to payment periods on an income-driven repayment plan for all borrowers with federally held loans who had 12 or more consecutive months in forbearance or 36 or more total forbearances over the life of their loan. So if you fit in either of those categories, then this will happen automatically. If you fit somewhere in between them, so maybe you have 24, not 36, you can request to be considered for this program. But like I said, that won't be happening until summer 2023 when we'll get more information. Another thing that's happening right now is called Operation Fresh Start, which is bringing most borrowers who are in default out of default and into good standing. So this is to help people's credit, but also for folks who want to return to school. They can now receive Title IV aid, so Pell Grant, work study, loans, etc. And then the one-time debt relief, which is the 10 to or 20,000, depending on whether you got the Pell Grant and earned under $125,000 a year for single household. That application is live as of yesterday. I have the link here. It's also at the end of this presentation, as well as on our student advocacy website as well. And you can Google it. Also, just make sure that it's studentaid.gov, because that is the department's website. You just want to make sure that you have the correct URL. Okay, so first things first, you want to make sure that you have your FSA ID. You know it and you know how to use it. So this is a username and password that if you've done the FAFSA since 2015, you created to do the FAFSA. If not, you may have used a PIN earlier, so you'll have to create an FSA ID. It takes about 30 minutes to do, and then it just stays with you for the entirety of your repayment. So once you create your FSA ID and log into studentaid.gov, you can see all of your loan history there. And this view details link is now right next to the My Aid text on their website. But if you click on that link, it will give you detailed information about all of the loans that you have, including who's servicing them, when they were dispersed, the last payment that was made, next payment that's due, etc. Okay, so federal student loan servicers, there were 8, and Fed Loan Servicing was the only servicer that managed the PSLF program. But as I mentioned, they are no longer servicing federal student loans. So Mohila is the company that has taken over that managing the PSLF program, and they will manage the loans or service the loans for all borrowers who have notified them that they intend to apply for PSLF. Okay, so now I'm going to talk about the normal public service loan forgiveness eligibility requirements. And it's also important to point out that these rules will also apply after the waiver is over. The waiver is just kind of this like temporary period between the normal PSLF requirements. Okay, so requirement 1 is that you have eligible federal student loans. This means any type of direct loan. So all of the loan types in the green boxes are eligible for or qualifying for PSLF. So any direct loan, subsidized, unsubsidized, direct consolidation loans. With plus loans, if you have a direct grad plus loan, that is eligible for PSLF. If you have a direct parent plus loan, that is eligible for PSLF if you consolidate it into a direct consolidation loan. And the reason that you would do that is because parent plus loans on their own are not eligible for any of the income-driven repayment plans, which I will talk about shortly. And so in order to have access to them, you would need to consolidate into a direct consolidation loan, and then you have access to one of the income-driven repayment plans. If you have Perkins loans or FEL loans, you may need to consolidate them in order to have them qualify for PSLF. So Perkins loans was a program that was discontinued in 2017, where the student borrowed money directly from the school and then repaid money to the school. Most of these loans are therefore not federally owned because they're owned by the institution where you went to college. So you would have to consolidate them into a direct consolidation loan in order to have them qualify. I should also point out that Perkins loans can be eligible for cancellation through other like certain types of employment. So it might make sense to do that. It might also make sense to consolidate them. Okay, and then FEL loans. So this was the loan program before the direct loan program. It was discontinued in 2010 and we switched to the direct program. But before that, the FEL program was one where a borrower would do the FAFSA be awarded federal student loans, but they would really be originated and funded by a private financial institution like a bank. So think like a Chase, like a Sallie Mae, a bank of some sort. So they were really lending the money to borrowers, and then the Department of Education was just guaranteeing those loans. So in the event that a borrower didn't repay the loan, the bank would still get paid by the federal government to cover the risk of lending. So these loans are largely commercially owned because they were owned by that commercial bank. However, some of them are federally held. And there is a way to find that out by looking on studentaid.gov. You can, as long as it says Department of Ed in front of your servicer's name, then it is a federally held loan. If it doesn't, then it is not. Okay, so you have the correct type of loan, the eligible type of loan for PSLF. Now you want to make sure that you're on the right repayment plan. So this is a snapshot of what the loan simulator used to look like. But essentially you enter in your information, your FSA ID, tax filing status, household size, etc. And then it will generate what your payment looks like on all of the different repayment plans. So it can be a really useful tool if you're not sure which plan is best for you. So there's sort of two different types or two different groups of repayment plans. This group is what are called fully amortized loans. So that means that the repayment period will, the borrower pays off the loan within that repayment period. So if your repayment period is 10 years, you're making 120 equal payments, and at the end of 10 years, there's $0 left. So there's no forgiveness because you've paid the loan off. Out of all of these plans, only payments on the standard repayment plan are eligible for PSLF. It doesn't make sense to really be on the standard repayment plan for all 10 years because you pay off the loan before and wouldn't have anything left for forgiveness. But if you were on it for a year or two and then learned, oh, I should actually be on an IDR plan, those payments that you made during that 2-year period are still qualifying for PSLF. Okay, so that's the first group. The second group are all of these plans are what are called income-driven repayment plans. That's sort of the umbrella term for all of them, but they all have varying names that kind of sound similar. And all of them take your monthly or your income into account when calculating your monthly payment. So as you can see, they have varying percentages of your discretionary income, but it is a portion of your discretionary income. And discretionary income in this sense means anything that you earn above 150% of the federal poverty level. And so in Washington in 2022, for a household of one, that was is $20,385. So anything the borrower earns above that is considered discretionary, and they would request a percentage of that monthly amount. If the borrower earns that amount or below that, you can sign up for an IDR plan, and then likely your payment will be $0 or a very low dollar amount. And those $0 payments still do count as on-time payments, and they still do count towards your qualifying payments for PSLF. So that's why it's really great to be on an IDR plan, even if you are not earning very much. Okay, and then all of these plans have a forgiveness function. So after a certain amount of payments, so 20 or 25 years of payments, any amount that's left over will be discharged. So the borrower doesn't have to pay that remaining amount. And then all of these payments also require the borrower to recertify their income on an annual basis. And that is to just for the government to re-verify that your income is either the same, and so your payment remains the same, or if your income has changed, they can recalculate a payment for you. Okay, now, so you have the right type of loan, you're in a qualifying repayment plan. The next thing you want to make sure is that you have a qualifying employer. And so your employment must be full-time, which is 30 hours a week or more, or full-time as defined by your employer, whichever is greater. And then part-time is acceptable as long as you are employed by one or two you're employed 2 or more employers, and your hours add up to 30 hours. All of the employers have to be public employers and nonprofits or government, and the hours can add up to 30, and they're eligible for PSLF. So as I just said, the employer has to be public, meaning any level of government, including local, county, tribal, etc., or a 501c3 nonprofit organization. If you're not sure about your organization's tax filing status, you can ask someone at your agency in accounting or HR or something like that, and they can let you know. Or you can look on your W-2, and it should have your employer's identification number for taxes. And you can use that in the PSLF help tool, and it will let you know whether your employer is qualifying or not. The employer is much more important than the role that you have. You could be a administrative assistant, a maintenance worker, a bus driver, et cetera. As long as you are employed by a public employer, you are eligible. And then you have to be employed when you apply for the program, and then also when forgiveness is granted to you. You still have to be employed in the public sector when both of those things happen. And then lastly, some organizations that have 501c4 tax filing status are eligible for PSLF, but you have to be in one of these fields. So if you work for a 501c4 that does public library services, then you may be eligible for PSLF. The only orgs that are not eligible are, like definitively not, are labor unions or partisan political organizations. And to clarify, you can still be a member of a labor union, just can't work for the union itself. Okay, the last requirement is that you have 120 qualifying payments on your loans. And so all 120 payments have to be on time, made in full, scheduled, made after October 1st, 2007, which is when PSLF started, made via a qualifying repayment plan. So one of those IDR plans or the standard plan that I talked about. All payments do not have to be made consecutively. They don't have to be made with one servicer or with one public employer. You could have 10 different employers over 10 years. As long as they're all public, that works. Okay. So once you realize that you have met all these requirements, you can do 2 things. You can either certify your employer if you're not close to 120 payments, but then when you're ready to ask for forgiveness, you've made 120 payments, you use the same form. It has this long name. And this was created in 2020. They combined 3 different forms, so it's a lot easier to fill out and less confusing. And so if you're certifying your employer, it's recommended that you do that every year, and that's just so that you can slowly watch your payment count go up. And if there is any sort of discrepancy, you can sort of try to resolve it within the year rather than waiting all 10 years and then trying to resolve it. It's not required, but it is recommended. And you can do this via the help tool online, which we have a link to at the end, or you can do it on paper and then fax or mail it to Mohila. If Mohila is already your servicer, then you can just upload the files to their website. And then once they have that form, they go back and look at your payment history and assess how many qualifying payments you have. If Mohila is not your servicer, then you would, once you submit the form to them, they become your servicer because, as I mentioned, they are the only company that manages the PSLF program. Okay, some frequent issues that we see are, I would say the top two are borrowers that have an unqualifying type of loan, but think that they qualify. So they have those older FFEL loans, perhaps their servicer tells them, yep, you're all good. Or, they just say like, well, I'm working in the public sector and I'm making payments, so I must be all good. So you have to have the correct type of loan, the direct loan or a federally held loan. And then another common issue that we see are borrowers who make payments on those non-IDR plans, those unqualifying payments, payment plans. So like extended or graduated are the main ones. Yeah, as I mentioned, a lot of times borrowers will receive incorrect or misleading information from servicers or confusing information that really sort of can make the whole thing seem way more confusing, and then the borrower doesn't really know where they stand. We are seeing some signature issues more recently, as well as like incomplete forms. So it's good to make sure that you're filling it out all the time. And then, yeah. Okay. So record keeping is very important. While your servicer should be keeping detailed records, it's also a really good idea for you to do the same. And then it's important to keep records for the payments you make, every time you certify your employment, and then any type of correspondence you have with FedLoan or MOHELA about PSLF. And then, as I mentioned, that consistent certification of employment is really helpful to address the issues as soon as they happen, rather than waiting towards the end. And then we really recommend doing as much communication in writing as possible. However, if you do call and speak with someone, it's good to get their name, but also their employment ID number. All of the representatives you'll talk to will have one, and then note the date and time that you called. Okay, so the temporary waiver period, so I just talked about the normal program. Now I'm going to talk about what has changed with the waiver period. And just to reiterate, the deadline to apply for this is October 31st this month.
Stephanie?
Yes.
Sorry, someone did ask you to speak a little slower.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Okay.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that I brought that to your attention.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Sorry, everyone. I'll have some tea and slow down. Okay. So the limited waiver opportunity was announced last year. And so it was a year-long program, October 6th of last year to October 31st this year. And the purpose of this was really to try to help as many people who have been working in the public sector get closer to that PSLF. And because they recognize that the requirements for the program were confusing, pretty rigid, and that there had been a lot of claims that servicers were not giving borrowers accurate information. So in order to sort of right all of those wrongs, the department said, we're going to temporarily waive a lot of the requirements for PSLF to make it easier for people to get closer to forgiveness. So what are the items that they waived? So the new things that count are repayment on all loan types, except if the borrower only has Parent Plus loans. And now I should take out that joint consolidation part, because we're going to talk about that in a bit. But yes, for whatever reason, borrowers who only have Parent Plus loans are not eligible for the waiver. If a borrower has a Parent Plus loan and at least one loan from their own education, they can qualify for the waiver. But only Parent Plus doesn't count. The period of repayment under any plan is now eligible. So if you made those payments on an extended plan, they're saying that they're going to count them. Repayment on loans before consolidation, no matter the repayment plan. So if I had, say, I'd been working for WASAC for 10 years and I had a FFEL consolidation loan that I was making payments on, I can now, during the waiver period, consolidate my FFEL loan into a direct consolidation loan and receive credit for the last 10 years that I've been making payments while employed at WASAC. So that's a huge thing, right? Because a lot of times folks are required to consolidate in order to be eligible for PSLF, but it kind of negates the payments they've made and the working history that they have had in the public sector. So that's a really crucial one as well. They're also counting payments that were either late or made for less than the amount due. So a partial payment, you couldn't make the full amount, they're going to count that as long as you paid something. And then also important is forgiveness can be granted to folks who are no longer employed and no longer employed in the public sector. That's really great for folks who particularly have retired and maybe still have student debt. As long as they're retired from a career in the public sector, they have that 10 years, they are eligible. And then lastly, if you are a teacher and you also applied for teacher loan forgiveness, you used to have to do 5 years for teacher loan forgiveness and then 10 years for PSLF. And now they're saying, we're going to use that 5 years from teacher loan forgiveness to count towards your 10 years of PSLF. So instead of doing 15 total years, now it's just 10. So that's really helpful as well. Okay, so that all sounds great, but how does one qualify for the waiver? So there are 3 types of sort of groupings of borrowers. So the first group is borrowers that have at least one FFEL or Perkins loan. And so these borrowers would want to first verify that their employer is eligible. So you would do that using the PSLF help tool and using your employer's EIN number, employer identification number. Once you verify that they are indeed eligible, then you're going to consolidate your loans. You should pick MOHELA. If you've already consolidated and you didn't pick them, that's okay. But if you're going to consolidate, pick MOHELA because your loans will eventually wind up with them anyway. So then your loans get transferred to MOHELA, and then you'll use the PSLF help tool to fill out the form for each employer you've had in the public sector. Okay, so that's the first group. The second group are folks who have direct loans but have never told their servicer that they work for a qualifying employer. So once again, use the help tool, verify that your employer counts or is eligible, and then you submit a PSLF application for each public employer that you've had while you've been paying on your loans. And then if your loans are with Nelnet, or any other servicer, they'll get transferred to MOHELA, and then MOHELA will evaluate, looking at your payment history, how many qualifying payments do you have. And then lastly is the group of folks who have direct loans and have submitted at least one ECF in their loan period. You don't need to do anything. At this point, the department has already gone back retroactively and looked at your repayment history to assess if there's any new payments that are now eligible under the waiver. And I should say they should have notified you of that as well. Yeah. Okay. So if you are in the first group and you need to consolidate your loans, it's relatively easy to do. Takes, I would say, like 45 minutes, maybe half hour to 45 minutes. So you'll choose MOHELA as your servicer. You'll choose an income-driven repayment plan. Then you'll use the IRS data retrieval tool, which takes your tax information from the IRS and inputs it into the consolidation or the IDR application. Then you read through terms and conditions, you list some references, and then you review and sign a master promissory note, which is a entirely new master promissory note for an entirely new consolidation loan. Okay, so this was just announced today, or at least we found out about it today. But earlier this month, the president signed a new law called the Joint Consolidation Loan Separation Act. So this allows for borrowers who have previously, for married borrowers who had previously consolidated their loans together into one loan. as it says here, this was only a certain period of time where folks were allowed to do this. However, it proved to be a little flawed in that if borrowers divorced, they could not sort of untangle the loans. They were stuck together. It also just got very complicated with lots of other programs, but now there is going to be a way to untangle those loans. So being mindful of the fact that this passed while we're still in the waiver, the department and the department doesn't have a way to untangle them yet. They are being mindful that there are folks that might still want to qualify for the waiver. So what they're asking is that borrowers who have one of these joint consolidation loans to use the PSLF help tool to generate a form on or before October 31st. And then once you do that, once your loans are untangled, then you will submit a reconsideration request. And you can make a complaint to us and we can help you go through that process because we don't really have that much more information right now. So as we learn more, if you are in this group, please reach out and we can definitely help you navigate it. Okay, now I just wanted to inject a little bit of positivity and show you this is what the waiver outcomes have looked like for Washingtonians. They only have data going back to March of this year, but as you can see, we've had almost 5,000 borrowers in Washington get their loans canceled due to the waiver, which is really great. And that is a dollar amount of $309.6 million, which is also really amazing because that is a lot of money that people now don't have to repay, and it is a lot of weight off of folks' shoulders. So it is working, and lots of people are really benefiting from this. Okay, I'm going to end with a few other sort of loose ends, and then we're going to get to questions. So if you choose to, you can make lump sum payments. You can prepay future months and still have them count for PSLF. So if your monthly payment amount was $100 and in January you decided to make a $1,200 payment, that would credit you for the next 12 months and you wouldn't need to make another payment until the next 12-month cycle. As I said, they qualify for PSLF, but it is important to point out you can never make more than 12 qualifying payments in one calendar year. And by that I mean, if my payment was $100 a month, I can't make a $1,200 payment in January and then make additional $100 payments and try to get, say, 24 months in a calendar year. They won't allow me to do that. They'll only give me 12 months. Okay, this is important because there are, with every change that we see at the federal level with student loans, there are usually scams that pop up. So signs of a scam, they're asking you for fees, there's a monthly fee involved in addition to your payment, right? Or there's a fee for processing paperwork for you. That is not a legitimate organization. And then if they have titles like federal or national in their name, that can be something that is meant to sound official, but is actually not affiliated with the federal government. A lot of times they'll make promises like immediate relief, guarantees, things like that. You should be wary of those. And then lastly, if they're advertising to you via text message, social media, if they're calling you unprompted and saying, you know, that they don't have your paperwork and it's not your servicer, you should be a little wary of it. Okay. In addition to, or more state laws that have passed related to student loans, there was a law that passed this year that will require public employers, mainly state employers first, to notify their staff, their employees of the existence of PSLF and then help them certify their employment on an annual basis. It also requires us to create some materials for both employees and employers like FAQs, fact sheets, etc. And then this information will be provided to all employees annually, newly hired employees, and then when employees leave their jobs. Okay, I think we're almost at the end. So really encourage you, if you have a question, if you have a complaint, you have a right to make a complaint to us, and we can help you resolve it. So studentcomplaints.wa.gov is the website. We also work very closely with the State Attorney General's office, as well as the Department of Financial Institutions, as both of those agencies have law enforcement ability and they can enforce state consumer protection laws. There's also at the federal level, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. They receive and respond to complaints about all types of financial products, so not just student loans. As well as the FTC, they go after companies that take advantage of folks. So scam companies, they also deal with identity theft. So if you've been the victim of a student loan scam, I would really encourage you to make a complaint to the FTC because it helps them go after those types of companies. The Federal Student Aid, the FSA Ombudsman's Office is also a resource. You can make complaints to them about your federal student loans or just federal student aid, and they can help you resolve them. And then lastly, each servicer has their own ombudsman's office that you can also reach out to. Here is a list of the resources we talked about. The help tool is really important. You want to make sure, I would say if there's like one thing you take away from this is that in order to make sure you get credit under the waiver, you need to do this PSLF help tool on or before October 31st. Doing so creates a record with the Department of Education so they can see that you did the form and that you intend to apply. And they have said that they will count that as the necessary step under the waiver. There's also a very dense but very informative FAQ on the department's website as well. I use it all the time to find answers to questions. So if you have a more intricate question, the answer might be on that website. We have our own PSLF page, wasac.wa.gov/PSLF. So that's where you probably signed up for this webinar, as well as we have other resources and information on that page. And then again, the one-time debt relief application, the link is here, just so you make sure you're getting that type of forgiveness if you're eligible. Okay, and with that, we are going to go to questions.
All right, so let me roll back here to the questions because some of them I did not get to. Someone said, may I have a copy of the slides? Are we going to be sending these out after?
I can not commit to sending them out just because we are completely overwhelmed. But what I can commit to is having them on the PSLF website, the wasac.wa.gov PSLF website, so that you can visit that and see them there.
Awesome, thank you. And then how are servicers supposed to notify student borrowers about the student loan advocate? This is the first time I was made aware that a student loan advocate existed in Washington State, and I have been a borrower for several years.
Yes, so this was only as of 2018, but they are required to send an annual notice as well as have information on their website somewhere with the contact information for our office. Yeah, so if you can't find that, let us know, but it should be something on their website.
Thank you. This one was already answered. It is confusing that the Grad Plus loans are not in a green square on the #1 eligible federal student loan slide, but she said plus loans are eligible. Are they?
Yes, so yes, you're not wrong. I put a little asterisk there only because plus loans can be FFEL plus loans. So you can have a FFEL grad plus loan, which wouldn't be eligible for PSLF. However, if you have a direct grad plus loan, that is, and grad plus loans and parent plus loans are like very different. And so while they're all called plus loans, there's just like different things that happen with them. So that's why I put the asterisk there, because it's like, I can't solve this with a box. I need to like get into the weeds on it.
Thank you. What is the HH of 1 in WA on the IDR slide? I think you mean a household of 1 in Washington. Is that correct?
Correct. Yes. Sorry for my acronyms, but yes, household of one in Washington.
Okay, great. Simulator showed ICR as the only available choice. Is there a link that shows the federal poverty level? Trying to figure out how they determine my payment amount in the simulator for income contingent premium plans. Thanks.
Yeah, so this is a good question. Oops, sorry, didn't mean to do that. Let's see. The simulator works, but one thing to keep in mind about it is that the amount that they show and the forgiveness that they show over time involves a lot of assumptions. So in those numbers are changes. The government assumes you have a certain increase in income over time. So that can affect what your payment is like over time. If ICR is the only available choice, I think that would probably, well, what that would indicate to me is that you have a consolidated loan that had Parent Plus loans, or that's what it should be at least. As far as the federal poverty level, there is a link, and I was going to try to pull it up. I just Google it like literally every year to just see like what has changed, because it changes annually. But I think it's Health and Human Services website has the poverty guidelines. Yeah, I can drop this in the chat.
Okay, thank you, Stephanie.
Yeah.
Kyle asked, when looking for jobs, is there a good way to verify a position qualifies for PSLF before you apply?
So you could, well, first of all, if you're employed by a government agency, that always counts. And if you could ask your employer if they're a 501c3, or the potential employer, if they're a 501c3 nonprofit organization. If they say yes, then they will qualify. Things you need to look out for are if you are working for an entity that is contracting with the government for services. So I see this a lot in the healthcare or sphere, teaching, and I'm sure there are others. But so if I was employed by a company that, contracts with the Department of Health, so even though I might be doing work for the Department of Health, it really depends on who I'm employed by. So you just want to make sure that your employer has that 501c3 status or a government agency. The position doesn't really matter. It's really what is the status of the employer.
Okay, thank you. You said that you have to be employed at the time of forgiveness. Do you mean you have to be employed for 120 payments? Yes. Or do you have to be employed after the forgiveness? I think that's what they mean.
So in the normal PSLF program, both. So you have to be employed in the public sector for all of those 120 payments. Then you submit the form. You still have to be employed in the public sector. And then let's say it takes them 3 months to process your request and grant you the forgiveness. I still have to be employed in the public sector in order to receive the forgiveness. I don't know how they really figure out at that point if you are or not, but I have read borrowers getting their loans reinstated because they no longer work in the public sector when they receive the forgiveness. So during the 120 and after.
And this is from the regular rules, not for the waiver.
Correct. Yes.
Yes. How can I check on the status of my PSLF application I submitted in September?
So someone brought to our attention that Mohila has a page on their website now. I just put it in the chat where you put in your social security number, date of birth, and last name, and it will tell you where the status of your application is. Either they've received it, they're processing it, etc. So I would start there. If you are not getting good information from there and it has been more than 90 days, then I would say reach out to us at studentcomplaints.wa.gov and we can help you get a response from MOHELA.
Thank you. What kind of signature issues are you seeing?
In terms of the waiver, I think the biggest issues I'm seeing are just it's taking a lot longer to get a response from the servicer. And then borrowers are having trouble reaching the servicer primarily by phone. They're having to wait hours to get through just because the demand is so high. Because as I said, like this is a really amazing opportunity. And so I think a lot of folks are just have a lot of questions and because there's such a high volume, it's hard for them to respond. Oh, sorry. Now I understand the question. Signature, not like normal. Okay, signature issues I'm seeing are, I've primarily heard from HR departments. So they've had applications rejected because of the title of the person was like, the title of the HR rep was like consultant, and they didn't like that for some reason. And or using certain types of like scripted text that's typed in, they don't like. But there is, I can drop in the chat also. If you search on this FAQ page for the word signature, they have a little table of the types of signatures that are eligible and the ones that are not. So that can hopefully help you avoid those issues.
Thank you. Are you able to answer in general? Do you have to be employed for the entire pandemic forbearance in order to have any qualified payments?
No, in general, no. Let's say so if I was working from 2010 to 2021 at WASAC, that's not the entire pandemic, right? But as long as I was working at a public employer, which I was, and that let's say I made 120 payments during that time period, that makes me eligible for PSLF. So I would just need to, as long as I'm presumably still in the public sector, just not with the same employer, then I would be eligible. But under the waiver, I guess if I like left WASAC in 2021, I could now apply under the waiver and receive credit for the 10 years that I worked previously.
Great, thank you. Will a day error really stop your application? I think I wrote out the month rather than 9/23/22. Should I resubmit?
So if you like physically wrote that out, that shouldn't affect anything as long as it's like a valid date. If you did the form though, it would pre-populate with the numbers like that. I've seen applications that have like January, like the word January written out that are fine. So that should be okay.
Okay, thank you. Do the feds take into account those of us who had Navient loans? They seem to be mismanaged. Or now are we unsure if payments counted? I received 500 as a result of the suit against Navient.
Yeah, so that's not something that is being taken into account with this waiver period. The lawsuit that this person is referencing was a lawsuit that a number of state attorneys general brought against Navient, including the AG of Washington. And so some folks received a payment returned to them for that, but that was like a separate state suit, and so it doesn't really have any impact on the federal waiver.
Thank you. Karen is asking, do you have a phone number?
We really prefer if you could make a complaint at studentcomplaints.wa.gov.
Mhm.
Jessica and I have links to our calendar that we can send you, and then you can schedule a time, because we have lots of people that are reaching out to us and we're not always at our desk. And so it just works if we can if you can help us set up that appointment, so we have that dedicated time to you. Because otherwise it's a lot of phone tag, which is kind of inefficient. So that's how we're preferring to do things, and it seems to be working really well. So I would ask that you submit a question here, and then we can schedule a time to talk.
Yeah, thank you. And just to kind of straighten what Stephanie was saying, the form collects a lot of information that we need anyway in order to be able to support you. So it actually ends up saving you time, because then we're not spending a lot of time just getting that information that we need to even just start looking at your what's the best situation for you. So thanks, Stephanie. I have been making payments while I was employed with the IRS. It was only barely a year. Will that count towards PSLF? Will that time in payments be added to my time in payments with my current job?
Yes, as long as you were employed full-time with the IRS, that is a qualifying employer. And as long as you made payments while you're working there, that is, even if it was only a year, even if it was only 2 months, like that, as long as you made payments and you were employed there, that counts. So you don't have to be currently employed there. You can retroactively certify employment.
As long as it was after 2007. I just wanted to make sure that we add that caveat there.
Right.
So October 2007. Thank you. Also, is there a way to please record all the Q&A conversations in the chat and make it accessible? This would help us a lot.
Yes, we are doing that. We're able to print a report of that, and we have compiled a list of the questions from the last 2 webinars we did. So I'm working on the Q&A. There's lots of questions, so I'm just trying to make sure I get to them all, but we're trying to get it on our website as soon as possible.
Thank you. All right, so the next one is a big question. It looks like my Perkins is not held by the Department of Education. My other loans are all Department of Education owned. So do I need to consolidate, shouldn't consolidate then for PSLF to be eligible for the relief?
Okay, so when this person says eligible for relief, I'm interpreting that as eligible for the one-time debt relief, which if you have loans that are not federally owned and you consolidate them with loans that are federally owned, that makes you ineligible for the one-time debt relief of $10,000 or $20,000. Again, this was just a decision that was made on September 29th without any real warning that would happen. So I would say you need to decide, do you want to include the Perkins loan in the consolidation to get it also eligible for relief under the PSLF waiver, or maybe you only have $12,000, right? And you're eligible for that $20,000 forgiveness, then maybe it doesn't make sense to consolidate them, because you're going to get that $12,000 of direct loans forgiven. And then you can just focus on paying off the Perkins loan after that. It's really complicated and messy that you can't, if you have commercial and federally owned loans, you can't combine them and get relief from both programs. I apologize, but it really comes down to your situation and how much debt you have and what you feel like you can manage.
And if you're not sure, you can always submit a question to us. Yes,
absolutely.
Submit a form to us, and then we can look at your situation with more detail and see what may be the best option. Okay. Awesome. There is a lot of information to digest here. It would be helpful to have a stepwise overview of the process. For example, I have qualifying loans. The first step is to get your FSA ID, then the PSLF application, then what?
So I believe that there's one on our website from the videos from the department. Is that right?
Yes, the PSLF tool. Is
Yeah.
that what you're talking about?
Oh,
Yeah.
no, not the tool. There's yeah, the step-by-step on the tool.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. I'll copy
So-
that and post it on the.
Yeah.
No? Okay, is that what you mean? Sorry.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm talking about.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
So that doesn't include, actually, I'm not sure. I don't think it includes like going over how to do an FSA ID, but it'll walk you through how to fill out the PSLF help tool, which is like really the important piece. If you also need to consolidate and you're having issues with that or concerns, make a complaint or ask us a question, studentcomplaints.wa.gov, and we can help you get through the consolidation piece.
But I will say this is a great idea and maybe something that we'll implement later on. So
Yeah.
thank you. I filled out the form on the federal aid website. What do I do next?
So if you don't have to, you don't have to consolidate, then you fill out the form, the PSLF application, and then you get it signed by yourself and by any employer that you added on the form, and then you submit it to Mokila. And if they're not your servicer, you have to either fax it or mail it. If you mail it, we recommend certified mail, so you have a receipt. If they are your servicer, you can just upload it to their website. And if you can't figure out how to do that, also reach out and we can show you how to do that.
Thank you. Is that an automatic thing that happens for teacher loan forgiveness for 5 years in the PSLF for 10 years?
No, not automatic. You have to apply for teacher loan forgiveness and then also apply for PSLF. So, but if you already got teacher loan forgiveness, like if it's already been applied and you're just trying to work towards PSLF, I believe, yes, it automatically got added or counted towards your PSLF waiver period. I've heard from at least one borrower who has had this happen, so I'm pretty sure that it happens automatically. If it hasn't happened for you and you've received teacher loan forgiveness already, reach out to us and I can help you figure out what is going on.
Thank you. I paid my FFEL loans off the same week that consolidation became available. This was because I couldn't consolidate them prior under PSLF. Is there any way to get credit for that?
I couldn't consolidate them prior under PSLF. I see what you're saying. Okay. I don't think so. But I have never been asked that question before, so it's hard for me to definitively say no. So I would ask you to send us a question via the complaint portal, and I can find out for you.
Thank you. I just graduated last June and have not made any payments yet on my student loans. I just got a job working for the state. Should I still submit a PSLF form?
I would say not yet if this is your first job in the public sector, because you're just getting started, right? You could, if you wanted to. It's not going to really, like the waiver isn't really affecting you. You just need to, like, you're getting credit for the months that you're not making payments under the waiver, as long as you're not still in grace period. Last June, so you're not in grace period. Yeah, there's no real rush. You can wait until like at the 1-year anniversary of your job. You can submit the form then, and then they'll count the last 12 months that you've worked at your job.
Okay, thank you. To clarify, does the waiver allow you to get forgiveness for a period of time after school during which you were unemployed?
No, you have to be employed. The employment piece is still required under the waiver. So the public employment is pretty key to both the waiver and the regular program.
Thank you. Hello, thank you for taking the time to share this information. I was reviewing my past loans and they fall under the FEL that were consolidated. So to be clear, I still have to request the direct consolidation prior to sending the PSLF.
Okay, so if you have a FEL consolidation loan, yes, you still need to consolidate into a direct consolidation loan. The department says that they want you to do the direct consolidation application first and then send in the PSLF form. But given the time crunch, I would say you can do the consolidation form today and then do the PSLF help tool tomorrow, because you just want to make sure that you're checking both of those boxes on or before October 31st in order to get credit towards the waiver.
Thank you. All right, I already went through the online steps verifying employer and just need to, this is with the person that we already answered their question. So I'm gonna go ahead and get this off. And then 2 people ask, what is ECF?
ECF is now an outdated term. It stands for Employer Certification Form. It was the form that existed before they combined all of the PSLF forms. And it's just the form you use to say, here's who I work for, here's their eligibility for the program, and then your employer signs off.
Okay, thank you. And then this one you already answered. It might be good to stop and ask if there are questions along the way. It is a lot of information, and I will touch on this. So Colleen, you're totally right. It is a lot of information. Unfortunately, we currently have about 90 questions, and if we stopped along the way to let people ask questions, we basically would be here all day and we would not even go to bed. So that's the reason why we wait until the end to answer the questions, because otherwise, if we get stopped along the way, it just basically wouldn't be feasible for us to have the information. But I understand what you're saying. It is a lot of information. Is Navient consolidated to Mohila? Are they separate?
Yes, they're 2 separate companies. Mohila services federally owned federal loans, and then Navient does not anymore. And so they transferred all of those loans to a company called Aidvantage.
Okay, great. Thank you. I have direct loans, have never made payments on my loans, but have been employed with the state for 10 years or more. I have submitted for ECF, for employment certification. What is the best I can anticipate with my PSLF application? I also just applied for forgiveness outside of PSLF, which I'm guessing they're talking about the one-time debt relief.
Well, I would say if applying for that one-time debt relief, it's going to wipe out all of your debt, then no, there's no reason to apply for PSLF. If it's going to wipe out like most of your debt, and say you have $2,000 left over, then probably it's not worth the time and energy of applying for PSLF. However, if it's not going to make that much of an impact, I would say the best you can anticipate with PSLF is if you have been in long-term forbearance, that once they do that IDR adjustment next year, that will give you credit for, that'll give you IDR payments instead of forbearance periods, which are then eligible for PSLF. I don't know how long you've been in repayment. So it's hard to say how many months that could be. If you've only been in repayment for 2 years, but you've worked in the government for 10 years, then the most you would get is 2 years if they were forbearances.
Thank you. And similar question, I have 2 months in which I was on forbearance. Would those 2 months count under the new temporary relief?
Not under the waiver, and not under the IDR adjustment, because that is, you have to have 12 consecutive months or 36 or more cumulative months. So if you only have 2 months, that is not going to be affected by those programs.
Correct, unless you were talking about the administrative forbearance in place for the COVID-19 pandemic, in which then yes, but if it's forbearance outside of that, then no, it would not count. I have only one Perkins loan and the rest are direct loans. I applied for consolidation and received paperwork from Advantage that said that I would not be able to move forward with an IBR plan if I consolidated. So I panicked and called Advantage to cancel my consolidation request, since being on track and hopefully qualifying for PSLF when my time comes, which requires me to be on an IBR plan. Was this the right move?
Oh, goodness. I don't know. I don't know if it was the right move. It was a move. I don't know that there is a right move.
That's right.
I think, again, this is kind of similar to the other person. If you have only one Perkins loan and that is, you know, like a low dollar amount, and you have loans, these direct loans are like really high and PSLF is going to wipe them all out, and you feel like you can manage paying off the Perkins loans, and like that sounds like a great plan. Also, maybe you work in a field that is eligible for that Perkins loan cancellation. It's not accurate, or I'm concerned that they told you that you couldn't move forward with an IBR plan if you consolidated, because out of all of the plans, the income contingent repayment plan is open to everyone. You don't have to have like a what is the word, economic hardship to do that plan. So that at the very least should have been an option for you. If you still want to consolidate, shoot us an email at studentcomplaints.wa.gov and we can help you figure out what you want to do.
Okay, thank you. I have 6 loans with Mohila. Do I need to consolidate them to apply for the waiver?
If they are all direct loans, you don't need to. If they are a mix of federally and commercially held loans, then yes, you may need to. Or yeah, then you probably would want to. I kind of don't have enough information to say yes or no.
Okay, thank you. If you want more information, submit a form.
Yes.
Yes. Does working for a federal contractor for a federal agency with federal benefits count as a public service employer?
That depends on, the question that is important is who is your employer and what is their tax filing status. If they are a government entity, then yes. If they are a 501c3 nonprofit organization, then yes. If they are a for-profit company that is just doing work for the federal government, then no, they are not, because they are not a government agency. They are a private company.
Thank you. If I have multiple past employers, do I need to submit a full expanded PSLF application with each employer form?
No, you just have to submit page 2, I believe, which is like where you put in the employer information. You just need to submit that for each, like each employer has to have that page. The first page, as long as you are able to get signatures from all of your employers, you can just have that page one as your cover page and then include the rest, all of the page twos for your various employers. If one of your employers you're unable to reach or they closed, you would need at least 2 different page ones, because there's a box at the end of page one that you check if you're unable to get a signature from someone at that employer. So that would be the only reason you would need a separate form.
Thank you. I don't know if you guys would be the ones to give any advice on this, but my employer suggested I continue my education to get my MBA. With that, I would prefer to not gather any more student loans. Are there any scholarship resources or governmental employees or any suggestions on where to look for scholarships? Thank you.
So one thing I can plug is, let me pull it up real quick, Washboard. Washboard is a scholarship database for students in Washington. So you might be able to find something there. Some government or some employers will pay portions of your tuition if it's, you know, relevant to the job that you're doing. So you could ask about that. I don't know, Jessica, this is sort of your wheelhouse. Is there anything else you would recommend?
I would recommend talking to your employer because if they're the ones pushing you to do an MBA, there might be some internal funds that might be available. So I would probably start there. The next place that I would check is if, for example, you're interested in doing an MBA at the Foster School at the University of Washington. I'm just throwing it out there. You can check in with that school to see if they have specific grants that you could potentially qualify for. So those are a few of the places that I would probably look for, like with your employer and also with the schools you're interested in applying, because they might have grants that are specific to your situation that a place maybe like the Washboard might not have listed. Great. Can you only have loans forgiven once? I'm considering going back to school for a second degree.
That is a question that has never entered my mind before about PSLF. And I love that you asked this question because now I need to find the answer to it. I'm not sure. I know with some other program, like forgiveness programs, like I'm thinking of the disability discharge, you can get that twice. And I assume, yeah, I know that it's possible with other cancellation programs. I don't know if it's possible with PSLF. So yeah, I would say if you can shoot us a question at studentcomplaints.wa.gov, I will find the answer. I know that the answer exists somewhere, so I can find it for you.
Okay, thank you. I have worked for 21 years for a qualifying employer, but never filed a form with them or did anything to qualify for my years of service for a government agency. When I found out that I had to start counting at year one at that year that I discovered this, I was less than 10 years from paying my loans off. And all that is to say today, I never heard whether or not the PSLF program can help me with this now, or is it the same? With that loan that is 3 years from being paid off, is it the forgiveness not an option for me? I understand the waiver direction is different, but for some reason, this may not happen for me by 10/31/22. I feel like this is maybe a question for our forum, huh?
Yeah, I think this is a question for our forum because this is very specific, but generally speaking, yes, as long as you were making payments on the loans while you were employed for a qualifying employer, then yes, that's eligible under the waiver. And you only need to do the help tool before October 31st. You don't need to have signatures on the form by October 31st. So that's like generally answering the question, but if you want a more individual response, then please reach out to us.
Yes, but submit the PSLF tool. There's no harm in doing so, even if you don't go through with submitting the actual form.
Totally.
All right. Do I need to consolidate my loans into direct loans if they're all subsidized and unsubsidized loans? If I do consolidate them, will this make me ineligible for relief?
No, subsidized and unsubsidized loans can be consolidated together. The more important words are direct or fell, as long as they are, yeah, if you have direct loans already, though, you don't need to consolidate them.
Mhm.
You could if you choose to, but that won't make you ineligible for relief.
Thanks. And just to add to what Stephanie is saying, so subsidized and unsubsidized are types of loan based on whether the interest is subsidized while the person is attending school and other periods of deference of forbearance. It has nothing to do with who has issued your loan, right? So direct loans means that the Department of Education has issued your loan and it's held by the Ed Department. FEL loans and Perkins loans could potentially be held by the Ed, but they may not be. So if you're in that specific situation, then you can always submit a complaint to us using the complaint portal, and we can look into your specific situation to see if it makes sense to consolidate.
Mhm.
I was told that payments I was making for years were not qualifying because the payments were not large enough. I tried to get them to tell me how much I should have been paying, but I didn't get a great answer. I was making payments based on my income. Since my income was so low, I was required to make 0 monthly payments, but I was still paying something. How would I figure out how big of a payment I should have been making? I'm thinking those payments will become qualified under this waiver.
I'm thinking they'll be eligible under the waiver as well.
Mhm.
Yeah, as long as you aren't on an income-driven repayment plan and your monthly payment is $0, that is considered a non-time payment. So I'm sorry that you were told that that wasn't, or that you needed to pay more, because that is not accurate. Because yeah, if you're not above 150% of the federal poverty level, then you don't have discretionary income to pay your loans. So yes, this should be eligible under the waiver, but if you want to get more into details, send us a question, studentcomplaints.wa.gov.
Awesome, thank you. Also, can we talk about the part-time teaching staff multiplication? It went away before I could read it fully. Thank you for this. So
Okay,
long as the good answers.
I don't know if this person is still here, but here's the slide. And so this is a state law that was passed. And so it says that to help teachers who are employed, I think the intention behind, but it's anyone who's an academic staff at a school, to account for the time that you spend outside of the classroom on your job. Employers can now multiply your in-class hours by 3.35 to, like I said, account for all of the work you do. So that, and to help get you above 30 hours a week. So the law says that it may be applied retroactively. I would ask your employer to do that if you've been working there, for quite some time. And if they tell you no, I would like to know about that, just so that I'm making sure that employers are educated on what this could really mean for their borrowers and their employees if they were to do this. But yes, it's 3.35 hours is the multiplication you can do.
Thank you. And I think we already addressed your question, Colleen, so I'm going to go ahead and dismiss this one. Is there a resource where you can contact someone to discuss what your best plan may be?
Yes, that resource is studentcomplaints.wa.gov. You can make a complaint or ask a question there, and then Jessica or I will follow up with you via email, or if you want to set up a phone call, we will send you a link so you can book some time with us.
Thank you. I'm starting my master's, so I'm still a student and have not had to pay on student loans yet. 2 questions. I work for the county government. Should I apply for PSLF now? 2, I was awarded a Pell Grant during my undergraduate years. If I don't quite have $20,000 in debt yet, with this rollover as I'm starting to graduate now, Thank you.
Okay, you haven't had to make payments. You work for the county government. You don't need to apply for public service loan forgiveness now. However, if you have loans from undergrad and you are working full-time for the county, it might be a good idea for you to, if you're able to, like, this is a financial decision for you, but if you're able to, if you can make payments while you're in school, those will be eligible for public service loan forgiveness. And so you might have to contact your servicer to ask them, because a lot of times they just automatically put you in an in-school deferment. You can ask to have that waived and say that you want to make payments, and then those payments will be eligible for PSLF. And then I was awarded the Pell Grant. If I don't quite have 20,000 in debt, will this roll over? No, it will not. So it's only, the debt relief is only for loans that were dispersed before June 30th of this year. So it sounds like maybe wipe out your debt from undergrad. And then you would be borrowing new loans.
Awesome. To confirm, the main thing that needs to be done before the 31st is a PSLF tool. We don't necessarily need to send in the full application by then.
Yes, that is correct.
I have a specific question that I want to send to our portal. Should I send it with my work email or my personal email?
That is up to you. Yeah, that's up to you.
Okay. I'm planning to apply for the waiver. I have my employment verifications and I have filled out the applications. What is the best way to submit it? Fax, mail? Thank you for the presentation.
Whichever, like, I would say the one that you're more likely to do, that's like easiest for you to do, that is the one you should do. If it's easier because you live down the street from the post office to walk down there and drop off your application in the mail, do that. If you have the ability to fax from your home or you're at the office and are able to fax, do that. But either way, just make sure you have receipt that you sent in the form. So if you fax it, you get that confirmation. If you send it via mail, certified mail.
Thank you. Just to confirm my understanding, I only have a Parent Plus loan with Aid Advantage, so no forgiveness that I can apply for?
You can apply for normal PSLF. You can't get credit under the waiver. So you would need to, if you only have one Parent Plus loan, then you would need to consolidate it into a direct Parent Plus loan, and then it would only count payments moving forward on that new consolidation loan towards normal PSLF requirements.
Thank you. Can you use the one-time debt relief with the waiver and then the PSLF?
Yes, if you have all federally held loans, then yes, you can. You probably, yeah, you can apply for both at the same time.
Thank you. Since the CARES Act for the last almost 3 years have been in place, how does that count towards my payments? And I think we already answered this one. It counts towards your payments, basically, as long as you qualified for the payment pause.
Mm-hmm.
All right. During COVID, then payments were deferred. Okay, that's the same question. I have not made my first loan payment yet. I won't until January. Should I still apply now?
No. Presumably, if you mean that you just graduated, then you don't have any payments that could be counted under the waiver. So you would just start making payments in January, and those would start counting towards PSLF.
Great. I'm from Florida, but now live in Washington. If I have a specific question, concern, should I contact your office versus the Florida equivalent?
As long as you live in Washington, we can help you. The Student Loan Bill of Rights allows us to help anyone residing in the state of Washington that has student loans. So it sounds like that is you.
All right. How might the one-time forgiveness approval impact PSLF?
It would just lower the amount that you would have forgiven under PSLF. If you're not near 120 payments, then doing the one-time debt relief will they'll take 10 or 20,000 off your balance and then recalculate your payment based on that new amount. So that will be it could help you get a lower monthly payment as you finish out your 120 payments for PSLF.
Great, thank you. I thought I heard that if you were in deferment early on in my loans, that those years may be considered counting. I was directed there stupidly by a company called Student Advocates, only to learn later that I should have filed for IDR or lower payments.
Yeah, I'm sorry that Student Advocates took advantage of you. That's not the first time I've heard of that company. You could make a complaint. I would encourage you to do that about them. So deferment early on your loans, those could be considered for counting. That could be in reference to the IDR one-time adjustment period that's going to happen next year. It's for forbearance periods or deferment periods before 2013, as long as they weren't in school deferments. So if you were in deferment for an extended period of time that wasn't in school deferment before 2013, then that, yes, could become eligible next year when they do that IDR adjustment.
Thank you. I applied for PSLF in 2021. I received a reply with the number of payments that are forgiven. Will Mohila know that I did this? Also, I started a new job in Washington State in 2022. Do I need to let Mohila know immediately?
Oh, the number of, okay, that are forgiven. I applied for PSLF and will Mohila know that I did this? Yes. If you, I think what you mean is you applied for PSLF with FedLoan. FedLoan is required to turn over all of its documents to, like, all of its records to Mohila. So yes, they should know that you did this. And then also I started a new job with Washington in 2020. You don't need to know them, let them know immediately. Yeah, the waiver is really for trying to get credit for past employment that where you may have had fell loans or made payments on qualifying plans. So if you've already like submitted forms and you have direct loans, then there's no rush to tell them that you work for the state now.
Great. If I understand correctly, I must be on an income-based repayment plan to participate in PSLF. I'm currently on a standard repayment plan with payments around $300 a month. My payments would jump to $900 a month on the low end with IBR, and I can't afford that.
Yeah. So you don't need to be on an IDR plan as long as your standard repayment plan is a 10-year standard repayment plan and not a 30-year one, which is sometimes what you are offered when you consolidate your loans. So as long as you are on a standard 10-year repayment plan and that is affordable for you, those payments are eligible for PSLF. Just be advised that you might pay off the loan at the end of 10 years and not have any amount to be forgiven. And then I would also say, so the reason that your payments likely jump up to $900 a month is I'm going to make an assumption that you are married and that your combined household income is much higher than your individual income. So, and I'm not advocating for you doing this because I do not understand taxes, but I do know that if you are married and you file separately, that the income, most of the income driven repayment plans will only count your income for your monthly payments. The reason I don't advocate for someone doing this, just like writ large, is because that has tax implications and I don't know what those are. So if you want to use a tax calculator to sort of figure out what that difference looks like for taxes, or talk to a tax professional, that's an option, or could be an option for you to get a more manageable income-driven repayment monthly amount.
Thank you. Will discharge debt be subject to taxes?
So under PSLF, no. PSLF is always tax-free. With the one-time debt relief, some states, but not Washington, will tax it. The federal government has said that they will not tax it, but some states will. We're lucky that our state will not.
Great. Can you go back to the household of one and how that relates to the 15 to 20% of income calculation for payment related to income?
Yeah, it's super convoluted, right? So let me go back to that slide. Basically, the household income matters because the household of one is 150% of the federal poverty line. And keep in mind that the number I put up there was only for a household of one. If your household is, say, 6 people, that number is going to change. It's going to go up by a lot. But this is 150% of the federal poverty level for a household of one. So if I am a household of one and I earn, say, $30,385, I only earn $10,000 more than this. So they would ask for a percentage of that $10,000 extra that I earn above the federal poverty level. So if I was signing up for IBR, they would ask for 15% of my monthly discretionary income on that $10,000 only. So I hope that answers your question. It's very complicated.
All right, and there's another one that goes into that. If there's only an income of one in the household, do I qualify as one?
No, it's the household side is the number of people in your household. So if you have 4 people in your household, but only one of them is an income earner, then you're just using the income for the one person, but your household size is 4.
Thank you. If our loans are consolidated, what is the next step I need to complete? It is a little confusing what the exact steps are.
Okay, if our loans are consolidated, what is the first step I need to complete? So if your loans are consolidated, then you just need to, as long as this is a federally held direct consolidation loan, then you just need to do the PSLF help tool and fill that out for each public employer you've had since 2007.
Great. If I have been on the PSLF plan already for the last 3 to 4 years, but still have about 120K in loans that I need to, or can I qualify for this forgiveness if I am on this program already? Or do they automatically look at my account if I'm already enrolled in the program of PSLF through MOHELA?
So yes, if you have all direct loans and you have previously certified your employment, which it sounds like you have, then you don't need to do anything because at this point, the MOHELA, either MOHELA or FedLoan before they transfer your loans, has gone back and looked at your payment history and assessed for any additional payments.
Great, thank you. So what is the difference between PSLF eligible payments and PSLF qualifying payments?
I just love that these questions point out like how just completely confusing all of this is. So like such a good question. It doesn't make sense, right? So PSLF qualifying payments are payments that you have made. So they have a record that you made the payment, and the servicer has a record that you were working full-time for a public employer during that time. So if you have 10 qualifying payments, that means that they have validated 10 months you were working and you made a payment during that time. An eligible payment is one where they say, we have a record that you made a payment. We don't have a record that you were employed when you made that payment in the public sector. So eligible payments can become qualifying payments as long as you certify employment for that time period.
Great, thank you. This is good. I didn't even know this. I just learned something. Does a tribal employer qualify then?
If it's tribal government, yes. If it is a tribal organization, 501c3 organization, yes. And forgive me for my ignorance, I don't know if yeah, those are the two things that would count. Like if you worked for a tribal affiliated business that's not a 501c3, I don't think so, because I think it really comes down to, is it a government entity, including tribal governments, or is it a 501c3 nonprofit organization, or a 501c4 that does like certain things within the tribe.
Great, thank you. I have consolidated direct loans serviced by MOHELA. I don't know my FSA ID, but I can reset it. To confirm, my steps would be reset the FSA ID, complete the PSLF tool, and then my consolidated loans will be evaluated by MOHELA.
Correct. Nailed it.
Yes. Just to confirm, partial payments that are on time still count toward the 120. Does this include those on the pay-as-you-earn plan?
Yes. Payments on the pay-as-you-earn plan, though, are not partial payments. Even if it just means that they are relative to your income. But let's say my payment amount was $50, but there was 1 month where I couldn't pay $50, so I paid $25. Under the waiver, I will get credit for that month because even though I didn't pay the full amount, I made a payment, and so they're going to give me credit for that.
Thank you. The next person is an anonymous person, and it has to do with moving servicers and maybe some mismanagement of the loan balances and interest. If you're still here, please submit this question to our form. This is unfortunately not something that we would be able to cover here, but it's definitely super appropriate for you to submit a complaint form to have us look into this a little bit more for you. Thank you. Oh, another good question. Do you have 100? Do those 120 payments have to be consecutive?
No, they do not.
Awesome. Do I need to try again to submit my PSLF? And then there are forms to sign and fax to MOHELA?
So if by try again you mean that you tried but did not succeed, then yes, you need to do the tool and then have your employers fill out the forms and sign them, and then yes, fax them or mail them to MOHELA.
Great, thank you. Another great question. If we made payments from March 2020 until now, how do we apply for a repayment or refund? What if the loan was paid off during that time?
So if they were, again, voluntary payments, meaning you weren't required to because you were subject to the payment pause, you contact your servicer and ask for your money back. If you paid off the loan sometime during this payment pause, you can call the servicer and ask that they refund you for the payments that you made. This will reinstate the loan, but if you're also eligible for the one-time debt relief, you can ask that they refund you, say, $10,000 and then apply for the one-time debt relief. So you get $10,000 back and then your loans get discharged under the one-time relief.
Thank you. I graduated in 12/2021. I became a public employee on 4/22. Would I qualify for PSLF?
Not yet. You have to, the waiver is not really for you, the waiver, because you're starting your career. The waiver is more for people who have been in their careers and have not been eligible for the program.
But you can start.
Yes, you'll be starting. Yes.
Yeah. I have the right kind of loans. I graduated in 2020 and have not been required to make a single payment. I have been employed by qualifying employers since I graduated. Is that employment time retroactively qualified?
Yes, once you submit the PSLF form, it will be qualified. But right now they don't know that you have a public job. And so once you submit that, then you'll get credit for the period during the pandemic, since you're employed.
Awesome, thank you. My spouse has student loans that have been in forbearance, which I believe will be out of forbearance soon. Will his loan be eligible for the waiver? Or what options may be available? Is the non-borrowing spouse expected to repay the loan?
No, the non-borrowing spouse is not expected to, unless it's a joint consolidation loan. But if you're just, if they're just asking for their income information or their own loan information, for the purposes of the IDR application, the spouse is not responsible for repaying the loan. It's not a loan in their name.
Okay, yeah, but if your spouse specifically wants to know what options might be available to him and he can't figure out what those options are, have him submit a form and we might be able to figure out what might be the best option to potentially get forgiveness or cancellation. Do you have to choose between PSLF or the one-time forgiveness?
If you have a combination of commercially held loans and federally held loans, yes, you do, because you can't have access to both. If you have all direct loans or all federally held loans, then no, you don't have to choose. You can do both.
Okay, thank you. If you were unemployed, but not due to COVID reasons, for a very short time within the past few years, but you have always been employed by the government, will this affect your qualification?
But not due to COVID. It will just mean that that period that you were unemployed won't be eligible for PSLF because you weren't employed.
Okay, thank you. What if I don't remember the exact start and dates for employment for previous jobs? Will it cause problems if we put a date on the form that is a few days off? Do you want me to answer that? I can answer it.
Yeah, you can answer it because you dealt with this.
Yeah. So my suggestion is try reaching out to your employer and ask for those dates, right? Because you should be able to get those dates from them. If for some reason the employer is not answering you fast enough and you're like, oh my gosh, I really need to submit this tool because, you know, it's the deadline's coming up and like, there's just really no way to get that information. You go ahead and submit the tool with the best information that you have available and then reach out to us because we can have the dates deleted off of the generated PSLF form for you. And then you're just going to have to ask the employer to enter those dates for you at the time that they sign. But if you can't get the dates before you even complete the tool, that's the ideal situation. But if for some reason you're not able to, still submit the tool and then reach out to us and we'll help you figure it out. Okay. Anything else that you want to add, Stephanie?
No.
Okay. I submitted my PSLF application mid-September, but it could take 90 days to hear back on my application. If there's a problem with my application, will it be denied or will it still be considered on time because I at least submitted it before the 10/31/2022 deadline?
Yes, if you submitted via the help tool, then it doesn't matter if the forms are signed after the 31st because the department has record that you did that form.
Got it. But I think that their specific question is like, let's say that there's something wrong on the form.
Oh,
Right? And they need to like resubmit a form because maybe the dates weren't right, or maybe they checked the box that they weren't supposed to.
so I think that's the purpose of the PSLF reconsideration application, which is, I can drop the link in the chat, for folks who feel like their information or their payment count is not accurate, they can ask for that to be reconsidered. So I think that would probably be a good situation for reconsideration.
Awesome. And Mackenzie, Noyola, I think we already answered your question about you can get both PSLF and the one-time debt relief as long as all your loans are held by Ed. So I think we're gonna dismiss this one. I accidentally filled out 2 forms for the waiver. For the first, I had all the right employers, but accidentally submitted a second form, which did not save my prior employers, only my present. Should I generate a third form with all the correct info?
I don't think you need to, as long as the first one that you generated with all of the correct employers was, you did that via the PSLF help tool. If you did that between October 6th of last year and October 31st of this year, they have record of that. You just need to get signatures. If you don't have that form anymore, like you deleted the PDF or something, then yeah, you need to redo it again because you need that form to get the signatures from each employer.
Okay, great. I have been working for a government agency for 4 years, but have not really made payments due to pre-unemployment and COVID. Is it still worthwhile to apply? Nowhere close to 120 payments.
If you were in forbearance during that period, while working at a government agency, then yes, because you could get credit for that next year when they do the one-time IDR adjustment. Yeah, and then also you're getting credit if you have direct loans, you're getting credit for the non-payments during the payment pause right now, as long as you're still employed in the public sector.
Okay, thank you. Do I qualify if I worked at a nonprofit for 5 years before COVID, no job in 2020-21, then hired again by the state in 2021? Does the non-employed time frame affect my eligibility?
Nope, you just don't get credit. Like if you made payments during the time period, you don't get, those aren't qualifying payments for PSLF.
Great, thank you. Your website has a sign-in option. Are we supposed to do that?
If you are referencing studentaid.gov, then yes, that's not our website, but you do have to sign into that to have access to all of your loan information. Our website, wasac.wa.gov, should not be asking you to sign in. Yeah, I'm not sure why that would be happening. If you want to send us a screenshot of it, that would be helpful because I'm not sure where you are.
All right. Is there a max for PSLF forgiveness, which I'm guessing they mean PSLF? I have over 175,000 loan balance.
Nope, there is no max. You can have all of the debt, and as long as you meet the other requirements, they will forgive any amount that's left over after 120 payments.
Great. If I'm eligible for the 20K in relief for having a Pell Grant, will that affect my PSLF if I only have 6 months to go?
It will just lower the amount that you eventually will have forgiven. Yeah, and maybe you don't get PSLF if you if that 20,000 like wipes out the entirety of your debt or almost all of it, and then you pay it off in 6 months. That's the only way it would really affect it.
Thank you. All right, the next question is from Sharonda. Sharonda, I really would encourage you to go ahead and submit our form so that you can schedule a time to talk to us. And then hopefully we can help you figure out the situation with your PSLF and hopefully not miss out on the opportunity. All right, I have consolidated my loans to direct loan. Should I check to see what kind of loans were consolidated to ensure that I qualify for the one-time debt relief option?
Yes, to see if they were federally held FFEL loans or commercially held. Yeah, that would be a good thing to check for, because then that will let you know if you can apply for the debt relief. And if you have trouble doing that, studentcomplaints.wa.gov and we can help.
Unless you apply before September 29th, right, Stephanie?
True, yes.
If you apply before September 29th, then you're fine. If you applied after that, then you have to do a little bit of homework to figure out if you're eligible.
Right.
If my loans are very old and have not been up to date, I haven't heard anything from 2011, but I checked and it shows a large amount on there with interest that I owe.
I'm not sure what the question is. You could still be eligible for the waiver, but it sounds like you weren't making payments. If you were making payments, then yes, you could be eligible under the waiver. If you were not, then perhaps you could get credit for some with that IDR adjustment that's happening next year. If you're in default on your loans, then you won't get credit for the period of default. But you will likely have your loans moved out of default under that Fresh Start program. And then you could continue making payments and qualify for PSLF moving forward.
Great. When using the PSLF help tool on step 5, review and save it, keeps saying there is an error and won't save. Is there another way to print out this paperwork and submit it to Mohila?
Sorry, I'm trying to answer another person.
It's
okay,
okay.
When using the PSLF help tool on step 5, review and save, you can just print the form, but that will not let the department know that you did that. So I would say if you reach out to us, we can flag this for the Department of Education, because that sounds like it's not your an issue you're having, not for your actions, but for the technology glitch. So we can help you potentially fix that or connect you with Ed to fix it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and I just answered the next one. Okay.
Great. I'm trying to submit the PSLF form through the Mohila app, and it takes me to the Federal Student Aid website, which does not have anything on it except the header and the footer information. Then I click on the menu and select PSLF under the loan forgiveness tab. There is nothing there. Do you know why the form isn't available on the Federal Student Aid website?
I do not. That's odd. Yeah, it's interesting. I don't know if you mean that you're trying to submit it, but like you're trying to upload the form to Mohila's website, or if they have a link to the PSLF form that's just not working, maybe. I'm not sure. Yeah, I think I would need to like understand what that looks like and what you're trying to, like if you're trying to fill the form out for the first time, or yeah, I'm trying it now to see if it loads, or maybe just try reloading the page, because I just clicked on it on Mohila's website and it loaded for me. Or you can just go to studentaid.gov/PSLF directly.
Awesome, thank you. Did you say that if you consolidate your loans, you won't be eligible for the one-time 10 to 20K debt relief? I think we answered this a couple of times. So I'm gonna go ahead and dismiss this one. Okay, this is someone that I know. I'm just, Elon, if you're still here, hi. Good to see you too. Great. I'm sorry, I consolidated my loans and they're with Nelnet now. I have applied for the waiver. Do I need to apply for the PSLF?
First of all, don't apologize. This is super complicated. You consolidated your loans and they're with Nelnet. If you apply for the waiver, meaning you use the PSLF help tool to say, here are my employers and I'm going to get signatures, then you don't need to apply for PSLF because you already did that. The waiver and PSLF are the same form. You just do that form during a certain period of time, which makes you eligible for the waiver. There's not like a separate form you need to do.
Okay. And Stephanie, I just want to check in with you. Are you still good on time? Because yours is 4. So I know that you might have other commitments. So I just wanted to check in with you, whether you wanted to continue or
yeah, I think we can. I'm good to keep going if you are.
Okay, yeah, we can keep going.
If you can stay, because I feel like we are so close to finishing.
I know. We have 154 answered questions so far, y'all. So 29 to go. Let's try to get through this. Okay. I have a joint consolidation loan with the previous spouse. He is the primary on the consolidation loan, but has not been making any payments. So I have been making consistent payments alone since 2011, but have had any, I think, no power to apply any of the repayment changes. PSLF application says I have no outstanding federal loan balance. My consolidation loan is currently being serviced by Navient. Any idea for next steps?
Yes, you should submit a form, studentcomplaints.wa.gov, to us, because I don't know what your next steps are, because the department is still, they haven't communicated to us yet, like what all you'll need to do, like how you untangle the loans. So I can't give you that answer now, but if you reach out to us, we can work with you through the process.
Thank you. I have been in the state since 2003 with 3 different state agencies. Do I need an EIN for all the different agencies, or can I just use the EIN for the current agency I work for and use the original date I started with the state? No,
for each state agency you work for, you need to use the corresponding EIN for that agency. For every agency you worked for since 2007, you'll want to include them to get credit for the payments.
Great, thank you. If I was already on an IDR plan, do I need to reapply since my loans were transferred to Mohila? I can answer that if you were working on the other question.
Sure.
So as far as the IDR plan, you want to be doing, you have to recertify every year. So if it has been over a year since you last did your certification, it would be a good idea to go ahead and submit your IDR certification again sometime soon, you know, before we start the resume the payments in January. And you can do that through the FSA website, Federal Student Aid website. You actually don't have to do it through Mohila unless you really want to do it through Mohila. But yes, basically the answer is if it's been more than a year, go ahead and do it because you're going to have to do it anyway. If not, then you should just wait until you get closer to your expiration and then apply at that point. All right, I've submitted an ECF in the past as I changed public employers, 2016 and 2021. Do I need to submit again to verify those past employers?
No. As long as you still have direct loans and you've already submitted ECFs, like you've already been reevaluated. If you wanted to submit another one now to account for the time between 2021 and now, you could do that, but there's no rush to do it by the end of this month.
Okay, thank you. Do you have a recommendation for students with that who are incarcerated and don't have internet access to apply for these programs?
Whew. That is, I think there's supposed to be a paper version of the one-time debt relief. Let me verify that. I don't know if it's available yet, but I think there should be one. In which case that would be something that they could fill out by hand and submit and get $10,000 or $20,000 forgiven if they, as long as they have federally held loans. In terms of PSLF, yeah, they would need to do the paper form and have it submitted before October 31st, which I don't think is realistic, considering they would need to sign it and have the employer sign it. Yeah, either that, or I don't know if there is, I don't know if you are familiar with, but there are, I know, education navigators in, I think, all of the prisons in Washington. And so that is maybe something that they could help them with. I'm not sure if that is something they could help them with, but I do know that they work in prisons and work with folks who are incarcerated around various issues, including student debt. So that might be a good resource for them. Otherwise, the paper form, I don't think it's available yet, but yeah, the paper form for the one-time debt relief should be something that they could fill out and then submit.
And if you also want to follow up with us to ask more questions about this, feel free, because there might be other resources that we just can't think about it right now. But
Right.
we'd be happy to support anybody that is eligible for these programs to become eligible. So just throwing that out there, regardless of whether they're incarcerated or not. I have worked for the government for 5.5 years and made payments under the standard repayment plan from 2019 until the payment pause started. Then made a couple one-time payments in 21 and in 2021. All of my loans are direct with NowNet. I have already applied for the one-time forgiveness, but should still owe over 15K in loans. Is it still worth applying for PSLF?
Yeah, I would say unless you want to pay back all $15,000 plus interest that you will have left over, yes, PSLF is worthwhile. If you are fine to pay off that $15,000, then and feel like PSLF is a paperwork headache, then that's really a decision up to you. But yeah, if you don't apply for PSLF, then you would just have to repay the 15K plus interest.
Thank you. Does the academic status apply to institutes of higher learning or just K-12?
I'm not sure what this is in reference to. If it's in reference to that multiplication thing under the new state law, that is for any academic professional, so K-12 or higher ed, so professors, instructors, etc. I think that's what this is in reference to. So yes, all higher or all education.
Okay. I just did the waiver and it says I have made 0 qualifying. I'm guessing they're saying 0 qualifying payments, though it does say loans. So, I'm not sure if we're going to go with payments.
Yeah.
And I have worked for the state for the past 5 years.
I've made 0 qualifying payments. So I wonder if you have commercially held loans that you have not consolidated yet. because you do need to consolidate them in order to make them eligible for the waiver. So if that's what I'm thinking. Yeah, unless there was an issue with the form because like the dates were wrong or they were entered incorrectly by someone at Mohila. We can help you figure that out if you want to send us a question.
Where can I determine what my monthly payment would be on the IDR plan?
If you use that loan simulator, which I have pulled up somewhere, it will simulate what your payment will look like on all of the repayment plans, including all of the IDR plans that you're eligible for.
Okay, thank you. If I have outstanding interest from a previous forbearance, will that be forgiven under PSLF?
If I have outstanding interest from a previous forbearance, yes, once you make 120 payments, like everything is forgiven, including interest, so principal and interest that is remaining after your 120th payment will be forgiven.
Okay, thank you. Navient recently changed my monthly payment and changed the number of months towards my repayment to 86 months, reducing what I was paying from 615 to 247. I did not ask for this change. Will this impact my eligibility? Janetta, if you're still here, I really think you need to submit a complaint to us, because if you did not ask for this and they did some kind of change in your account, then that is definitely a big deal, right, Stephanie?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So I would say probably submit a complaint. Is that what would be the best course of action for this? Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. During the waiver period, will the months of forbearance be counted as qualifying payments? Yes. We already touched on this. Can the PSLF eligible payments become qualifying if we were working for the SHS while going to school on a loan?
As long as you were making payments and you were not on an in-school deferment while working at DSHS and going to school.
Great. If my consolidated direct loans are currently in forbearance since before COVID, do I need to take them out of forbearance?
If you, in my consolidated direct loans, no, they're currently on the forbearance, the like payment pause forbearance that everyone is on. It just means that you had additional forbearance months before that, which could be affected by that IDR adjustment that will happen next year, depending on how many you have.
Okay. If the one-time adjust will result in 120 qualifying payments, will payments made during January on the debt relief happen to be eligible for a refund? I'm not sure I understand this.
If the one-time debt relief will result in 120 qualifying payments, will payments made during January through when the debt relief happens be eligible for a refund? I think I understand. So yes, if you, okay, so if I currently, let's say, have 90 qualifying payments, and then I start making payments again in January when payments resume, but then sometime next year, the IDR adjustment happens and that gives me credit, gives me say another 40 payments. And so now I'm over 120. Any payment that I made over 120 on a direct loan will be refunded to me. So if I made payments like January 2023 through say August 2023, that will get refunded to me.
Okay, thank you. And all right, Susan, Susan, I think I've been asking you to submit a form because you have a very specific question about, I think that just to recap, they're not able to find the information about older loans on FSA. It's not available there and they're not able to find it. That definitely would be something that they would have to contact us to get kind of sorted out, correct, Stephanie?
Yes. And I'm just going to very quickly share my screen for our portal because I saw someone else say that they couldn't upload documents. So you come to this screen and then you say student loan issues, it creates the form, and at the very end you can add files or drop files here. So if you click on add file, you can add whatever you want to it, or you can just drag and drop files there, and that should work.
Okay, thank you. All right. This is a follow-up to that. I have worked for the government for 1.5 years. What if my payments earned in the IDR are much more than the current payments on the standard repayment plan?
And are with Nelnet. I have already applied for one-time forgiveness, but still have other. Much more than the current payments on the standard repayment plan. Again, explore the tax filing difference. Otherwise, then it sounds like you will likely then, your income is such that you will repay the loan in its entirety or pay off the loan before you reach that 1/20th payment. So yeah, unless you change your income or unless your income changes or your tax filing status changes, it sounds like you will just pay the loan off before you reach 120 payments, which happens.
Thank you. But I graduated in June of 2017. I am still within the 10 years time frame for student loan forgiveness, right? I think there's more. There's another that answers this a little bit. I paid off my student loans within 1.5 years after I graduated, back when I was working at the Washington State Department of Transportation. I did not know about the student loan forgiveness by then. Can I get a refund, please? I had about 18,000 in student loans.
No, if you paid off the loan before 2020, like before the payment pause, then I don't believe you can get a refund, unfortunately.
Thank you. All right, last question for all the 28 people that are still here. It seems possible that 120 payments under an IDR that are significantly larger than the 120 payments in their standard repayment plan would cause the loans to be paid off long before the forgiveness becomes available. Would you recommend not applying for PSLF in this case, especially if you cannot afford the payments under the IDR plan?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is also kind of, I hesitate to make a recommendation because this sounds like something that really is a decision for you, in the sense that if your income is such that your IDR payment is going to be higher than the standard repayment plan, and you think you won't be eligible for PSLF, then like if you want the lower monthly payment, then you can do the standard plan and pay it off in 10 years, or you can do the IDR plan and potentially pay it off sooner than that. Like, yes, that's more money every month, but you're also paying less in interest over time. So it could work out that that is the more affordable option long term. I think it depends on like what is your goal? Is your goal to pay the least amount over time or have the lowest monthly payment? And that might change year to year too, right? If your
Mhm.
income changes. So that's like a very individual question. If you want to talk about it more, I'm happy to help you think through it, but that's really something I would sort of defer to your own financial situation.
Awesome. We're done. We made it.
I can't believe we did that.
I know.
Yeah, to the few amount of people that stuck with us, thank you.
Yes, thank
Um,
you.
it was great to have you here to spend this time with us, and please tell your friends and family and colleagues that work in the public sector to come to the webinars that we will be hosting if you know anyone that also has questions about PSLF. And yeah, we just really appreciate your time. Please reach out if you have questions, and we're happy to help.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.